You mentioned, what companies we know about them. And I think that's part of it is people are coming to know more. I was thinking about the recent Integris breach and how there was a lack of transparency on the part of the hospital. The hackers actually exploited that.
Yes.
And so now the association that I might have had with Integris is they got hit, hospitals get hit.
Yep.
That would have been a big deal to me that my information might be exposed, of course.
Yeah.
That's a concern. But my concern would have been this happens to hospitals.
Yeah.
If they had been transparent and said this happened.
Yep.
Here are the mitigations that we're taking.
Yep.
Here's your year of free credit reporting, whatever it is.
Yep.
My emotional reaction, my belief would have been, okay, that doesn't feel good.
Yep.
I still feel trust in the hospital. I still have a measure of trust because I believe that they have my best interests in mind. I believe that they're doing what they can.
Yep.
I believe they're going to take the remediations they need.
Yep.
Instead, now my emotional reaction is, like a little bit of disgust, a lot of distrust. And my belief is, I don't know that I can trust you because, again, hospitals get hit.
Yeah.
My personal information, that there is nothing a hospital can do to guarantee me that they'll never been hit, that they will never be hit, and that my information is secure.
Yeah.
What they can demonstrate to me is when that happens, we are going to be transparent with you. We are going to communicate with you. We are going to communicate our remediations. We're going to show that we're taking action.
And they're going to do it quickly.
And they're doing it quickly. And so now my belief with respect to that is there's a lack of trust, which has an emotional component.
Yeah.
And that's very hard to overcome now.
Sure.
Because now it would sound so false to say, here's our success stories.
Yeah.
Because not only did you have a hit, we had this. If instead there'd been that transparency, there'd been the openness, and later you come back and say, hey, actually, we just prevented this, I could be like, that actually communicates those two things matching up.
Yep.
You got hit. There's nothing you can do in one sense, but you're showing that you're successful. Great. You just built my trust.
Well, and marketing is all about building the trust, building that relationship. So I got a perfect example for this, and I want to get back to Integris because there's another piece to that is really important for me. The previous organization I was at had a data. They had a data breach from a vendor. So the vendor actually had the data breach. It affected us because it was our data and we had to do all the different things for it, but it was the vendor who actually had that breach. And I got very fortunate. We were one of the first. It was a very large impact on the community across the country. But I got very fortunate that through our cyber insurance and our breach law firm that was helping us with that, we were able to actually talk to the CISO of the vendor.
Oh, wow.
Very quickly. Well, within a week or two. And so we had 3 lawyers involved, 3, because we had our breach lawyer, we had our regular general counsel, we had me, and then we had their lawyers, their CISO, their CEO. So they did this meeting. So we had 15 people. It was a Zoom meeting, effectively. I think it was Zoom or WebEx. It was years ago. And we got on this phone call, and I got to ask questions of the CISO, and it was a CISO talking to a CISO. I honestly thought he did a good job. It wasn't their fault. It was actually a client of theirs, one of their accounts that got compromised. But everything he did was good. And by the end of the meeting, I'm like, okay, what he did was reasonable. They locked it down. They cleaned it up. They got in the right people. They did the right things. Now, and that's hypercritical of a CISO to ask another CISO,
what are you doing?
What are you doing? Because they know. I mean, they know, yeah, that's crap. Don't do that. But he actually did a good job. He was a nice guy. He was genuinely sorry it had happened, but he had the skill sets and the knowledge and the abilities to actually go out there and fix the problem. Him and his team. I thought they did a good job. But that helped me feel better about using that company going forward because he did a good job. Mm-hmm. And I told my the legal teams, it's like, hey, This is what he said. This is what that meant. And we had a big debrief on it. They go, okay, well, that makes us feel better.
Right.
So I think that those sorts of things are really important. Now, going back to the Integris stuff, that one was unique. It wasn't unique in terms of this has happened before, because it has, but it was unique in terms of scale. So the organization, I'm going to use some words here that may be unfair because I don't know all the pieces, but I think they are completely legitimate from the marketing perspective that we know of right now. So, as the outside people are seeing this, Integris covered it up.
Yes.
They didn't tell anyone. Whether they knew about it or not, I don't know, but they didn't tell anyone about it. The hackers told us, well, we tried to interact with them and they told us to kick rocks. Therefore, we're reaching out to the individual users and say, hey, if you want us to delete your data, give us $50 or $100 or whatever it was. So from the Integris marketing, that was terrible.
Right.
Because they couldn't get out in front of it at that point. They couldn't say, yes, we've had this issue. Yes. Yeah. Instead, the attackers got a better marketing position because they were able to reach out to the users like, hey, FYI, this company had a data breach and they're not telling you about it. So we're letting you know if you want us to delete your data, give us X amount of money.
Well, and made it relatively affordable. I think it was $50. So they get to look like, ironically, they look like the good guys. We're being transparent.
Yes.
We're being open.
Yes.
We're giving you a dedicated solution. The solution is reasonable. $50. Okay, fine. I think they even had, didn't they even have a user guide? Like, hey, if you don't know how Bitcoin works, we're actually going to give you a user guide. So even we're providing customer support.
Yeah.
Which is so strange because in a sense, you actually end up feeling trust towards the attackers.
You had direct remediation.
Yeah.
Direct, immediate remediation that the organization couldn't do.
Right.
So, yes. Now, again, it's a marketing thing.
Right.
How did people feel when they got down? First of all, getting reached out to by hackers, that scares the shit out of you.
Yeah.
But that's one of those things of, okay, get past that. Now what do we have? Once we found that, because I was able to find it, it happened, I want to say December 25th, 26th, somewhere around there. And I had people emailing my client, my VCs clients, they were emailing me, almost immediately. So during the holidays, so I jumped down the darknet. I found it. I found where their data breach was, and we went in. So I started calling my clients back saying, hey, let me look your people up. And we started looking up, and they had received it personally, but a lot of their staff members were in the data breach. So they had to do remediation. They had to go let them know, like, hey, because it wasn't affecting them as an organization, it was affecting them personally. So that was a huge impact to them. But you're right. It's that trust. Now they don't trust Integris for whatever reason it was. They don't trust because they didn't hear about it from them first. They heard about it from the attackers first.
Right. Well, and it makes me think about the fact that even if people don't understand cybersecurity, they're becoming more aware because of the prevalence of breaches. And so I think part of the marketing too is as a company to be aware of that.
Yes.
And to say, whether it was a security incident or not, we need to communicate. So I was thinking about, a few months ago now when AT&T had a nationwide outage.
Yep.
And the instant, it happened, and everybody who knows I work for a cybersecurity company, like I encounter them and they look at me like, so what do you think? Like, I don't know, right? Yeah. I can't say for certain. A nationwide outage is a big, like something happened.
Yeah.
But the fact that they didn't get in front of it. And this, again, I don't know. I don't know that anything was ever said, but the fact that what I would do is I would say to market is the second that happened, I would communicate to everybody, say, hey, there's a nationwide outage.
Yep.
It's actually because XYZ happened.
Yeah.
It's not a cybersecurity incident. And suddenly my trust would be, okay, in the absence of that, everybody's going, was this a breach?
Yeah.
Was this a breach? Was this a breach?
Yep. So 2 stories on that. First, the AT&T story. because they had released something a couple days later about it was a misconfiguration or a change or whatever. Okay, whatever. But now, here recently, we're hearing about a significant data breach and attack to AT&T. Are they related? I don't know. But everyone's making that connection in their mind.
Right, because if it was a misconfiguration, did a hacker get in and exploit the misconfiguration and just keep persistence on the network and wait?
Yes.
So, yeah, that's even less trusted.
Yeah.
Okay, you told me that wasn't, but did that create a vulnerability that you didn't communicate that, hey, this may lead to a data breach, we're being proactive, we're, implementing additional controls.
But, AT&T, huge. People are not going to yank their phones off.
Right.
They're mad. They're mad their data got out. But there's that distrust. Yeah. There's like, did they lie to me?
Right.
And I think that only happens, so many times where people go, you know what, I'm done.
There are other carriers out there.
But the other story I was going to tell about that. So, part of my previous life before CISO World,
that sounds like an interesting amusement park.
Yes, CISO World. Yeah, no, yeah. Every time you walk on a quarry, you get smacked in the face. Yeah, is that anyway?
That sounds like a blast of a fun house.
Oh my God, it'd be a whorehouse is what it would be. But before that, I worked at the help desk. And I managed the help desk and managed desktop support for a fairly large organization. I had 6,000 machines that I managed, 30 or 40 people or whatever it was. Anyway, but in my heart, it was help desk. We did desktop support and various, but it was help desk. So that's where everyone called. We always called the help desk. Whenever there was an outage, I got the calls.
Right.
My team did. I did and my team did. And I kept trying to get the CIO to let me, whenever we knew there was a problem, to send a note out so that I could say, hey, yes, we know it's down. We're working on it. And they never would let me. They rejected it for years and years and years. Well, finally, that CIO retired, went on, did other things, and I just started doing it. It made such a huge impact to the campus.
Yeah.
As soon as I saw something, I would send it out. I was like, yeah, we're seeing wireless problems. Yes, we're seeing a network problem. I didn't say anything beyond that. And just like, hey, yeah, we know where there's a problem. We're working on it. I would get so many thank yous. It's like, hey, thanks for letting us know. Now we don't have to put a ticket in, or now I'll just go get some coffee. I'm not going to worry about it. I built relationships up in the organization by those simple little one-liner emails to where they trusted me.
Well, and I think about, I teach an adjunct class. I'm only there once a week at night, but I get all the notifications. And one of the things I've been impressed with is that organization does that.
Yeah.
So, hey, we're having this issue. This is what we're doing to remediate it. This is when we hope to have it restored. Yep. And for me, that's huge because, that's huge for anybody on campus.
Sure.
But for me, I'm not there, so I'm not going to know until I show up at 6:00.
Yep.
Well, if I don't know because I'm not on campus, and I show up at 6:00 and I have something prepared that I need the internet for, and I never received notice, I'm just going to show up and have a class I can't teach.
Right.
If I know ahead of time, I can say, okay, are there things I can download? Can I shift? Am I going to need to use my hotspot? Like, there's all sorts of remediations I personally can take.
Right.
But only if I know.
It makes your job easier by communicating.
Yeah.
And I think that's where that marketing comes in. If I, as an organization, can market to you correctly, showing, hey, here's what's going on. Hey, this is what we're doing about it. It makes you feel better, makes your job easier.
Right.
And that's what you want.
Right.
But we have so many people that are not doing that, refuse to do that, will not do that. I was accused of airing dirty laundry once.
Oh, wow.
Because I let people know that we have a problem. And I understand from that point of view that they don't want people to know that they have a problem because they might get in trouble for it. My philosophy was, I need people to know we've had a problem so that they know we're working on it. If they don't think we're working on it, then we get in trouble.
Right.
And it's really hard to get it through to them, though. It's hard. Marketing is communication.
Yeah.
And people don't like communicating. They don't want to communicate. They don't want to communicate bad things. Okay, I understand that. Let's communicate both. Communicate good things, and let's communicate the bad things when they happen. But let's show we're staying on top of it. Let's show that we have the knowledge, skills, and abilities to be able to do this job at a level that gives people confidence that we're going to do the right thing.
You know, it's funny that you say marketing is hard. It's interesting doing marketing at a cybersecurity company because some of the engineers are a little bit, I don't want to say suspicious. Because I think what they do is you mentioned this, they look at it and say, that's social engineering, to which I would say, absolutely.
Yeah.
But in the same way that, you know, it's anything, good or bad. The same skills that make a really good ethical hacker, like our engineers, also make a really good evil hackers coming after your stuff.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, everybody wants other people to want and think and believe things. That's just why we communicate.
Yes.
So the question is, are they using their social engineering skills to get past defenses, to demonstrate weaknesses, to better bolster the security? In the same way, you know, it's important to think about, am I helping to create trust in clients and customers and internally with staff to better build a culture which is protective and defensive?
Yep.
Fully knowing that, if I'm not doing it, I guarantee you the hackers are thinking about it. Because they are approaching it as social engineering.
Yeah.
If I can get the words right, if I can get the messaging right, I can get XYZ out of them.
Yeah.
So why aren't we saying, you know what, let's tell better stories? It's the same skill set, it's the same thing. But in the same way that we'd say, let's do defense better than attack. Let's use our skills better than they do. Let's make our messaging better than theirs so that, one, people trust us more, and two, maybe that would help some people not go down the path towards hacking if they say, well, wait, I can use these skills, use them for good, be affirmed in my use of using them for good.
Yes.
Have people recognize what I'm doing, appreciate what I'm doing, know what I'm doing, because I think that's part of the,
that's a big one.
People find out works for a cybersecurity company, and they're really excited because it's a buzzword. I have no idea.
Yeah.
And so I'll, that's so fascinating. And then the next question is, what is that?
Right. Yeah.
So there's also just this knowledge gap. What do you do? Yeah. What is it that company does?
Yeah. Well, I think we need to build the community. Yeah. And the way we do that is by communicating to that community. And we market ourselves to them, not only to get them to trust us, but also to get them to do things better.
Right.
And there's certain things that we want them to always do. We want them to get better at. And if we don't market to them, that there's no way for them to know that. And just like you said, they don't know what we do. They don't know what we know, and that's perfectly fine. But let's teach them. Yeah. Let's teach them about passwords. Let's teach them about how attackers get in. I do one of my security awareness trainings. I don't call it security awareness training anymore. I call it attack awareness training, because I want them to know about the attacks that are coming in and how to defend against them. Not just, here's some security rules you need to do.
Right.
And I really go back to that, the whole low block thing, doing martial arts. Teach someone how to do a low block, and they can do 1,000 low blocks until you kick them in the knee. They don't really understand what a low block is, or punch them in the nose for an eye block or whatever. They don't know until they get hit. Well, if they get hit, it's too late. Right. So let's try to get into them, market to them, teach them information, and really let them know about the risks, because that's what we're trying to do, is help improve the processes and systems out there so we have less risk.
And I wonder if part of that is helping, or I think about this a lot, the way that, do your employees see themselves as a part of the protection? Or do they see themselves as, unfortunately, what I think can happen, and I don't know where this comes from, I think probably some of it's what's communicated, some of it's marketing, is the ethos on the part of the IT and security sort of a sigh. Like, instead of, one, do you ever tell the success stories of, hey, you know what, these employees, man, you guys are nailing it. You have really strong, good passwords, as opposed to, look, we're going to guess that. you need to say that. Like, dude, you've got to change that password.
Yes.
But do you go the other way? And even when you do encounter somebody and say you need to change this, do you couch it in such a way, not as you did something wrong, you're in trouble.
Yep.
You did do something wrong. But do you frame it as, hey, we need you to change your password. We need you to think about it this way. We need you to think about complexity this way. Because you then become a line of defense
Yes.
against an attack.
Yes.
So can we reframe it where every employee actively is thinking about themselves and therefore sees themselves as an ally with IT and security,
Yep.
not as what I think can feel like, just having talked to people, I think a lot of times employees feel inherently like they are perceived as a liability and not an asset. And I don't want to walk around feeling like liability, and that doesn't breed trust because I don't want to tell you something because I don't want to.
Yeah. You get the Saturday Night Live treatment. Yep.
Yeah.
So one of the things I ask organizations all the time is, when does your incident response plan take effect? And they're always like,
When there's an incident.
when there's an incident. It's like, really? Are you sure? And they're like, yes. It's like, is that what you have in your policy? Maybe. So we read through the policy. Of course, they don't have that, or they don't even have a policy. It's like, okay. So I give them a tabletop. And they do the tabletop. I take down the system. People die. Whatever it may be in the tabletop that day.
In the tabletop, we always want to clarify that.
Clear in the tabletop. But usually when I do tabletop, when I do my tabletop sessions with the organizations, it's not just doing a tabletop. It's I do a tabletop, I do some training, I do some more tabletops, and it really helped build the tabletop experience. But my philosophy is incident response is happening all the time. Every single employee is responsible for a little bit of incident response. Now, we talk about the 4 questions, the 10 questions, and we can talk about that some other time, but every single employee, whenever they see a situation that might be an incident, they need to ask certain questions. Mm-hmm. And these are trained questions. We teach them how to do this, and we reteach them, and we reteach them, and we train them on it, so that when that person sees an odd thing, like, oh, that's an odd message on my computer, I need to get a hold of someone right now.
Yep.
Oh, my computer has really critical data on it, and that's weird. I'm getting a hold of someone right now. And then that person goes, okay, well, here's these 10 questions. And at a certain point, if they get to certain questions and they had a yes in there, and they go, oh, all right, we need to institute incident command. We need to do this. But every single person in the organization is part of incident response. They have to know that. The organization needs to know that. Mm-hmm. If you are initiating incident response 2 days after an incident happens, you have failed.
Yeah.
You have failed incident response. I'm going to say this again. If you have initiated your incident response plan 2 days after you have had an incident, you have failed incident response. You want that incident response plan to be going all the time, everyone always on the lookout for a problem. And when they see a problem, they know exactly what to do. They know who to get a hold of. They know how to report it. Is not put a ticket in, is not leave a phone message, is get a hold of a live person and tell them, hey, I have a ransomware node on my computer. What do I do? That would save organizations left and right, if they were doing their incident response differently. I'll put it that way. They're doing the incident response differently, where everybody was involved. Everyone knew what to do. But how do you do that? Well, you have to market to them to say, hey, you're part of this. Let me teach you what you need to know. And what I need you to do is, if you hit any one of these questions, again, the 4 and the 10, and again, we can talk about it, but if any one of these questions is yes, you need to get a hold of a live person. That means call them. If you don't have phones, walk down the hallway. If you can't find someone, get a hold of their supervisor. Do whatever you have to do to get a live person in place. Get them involved. And then that next person in line goes, okay, I'm going to get some more information. We're going to bring up incident command. We're going to start doing this. We're going to do this. We're going to lock it down. We're going to do this. If you don't do that, you're at a detriment. I mean, you're getting hit right then. And the longer you wait, the worse it's going to be for you.
Yeah, I think about a company not that long ago where there was something that happened. They noticed some suspicious activity. They engaged us for an IR. It turned out to be a couple of false positives. And on the one hand, you could say, okay, well, they engaged a company. They paid money for this incident response. I'm sure that was not pleasant to have that experience. Say, oh man, it's easy to say we wasted money, as opposed to reframing it and saying there was no way to know that these were false positives. The cost, if they had not been false positives, was huge. What this also provided you is now you have knowledge of why did those false positives happen. They were able to make a remediation either in their software or in their the company that did their network analyzing and say, okay, we now know that we're not going to get those false positives. So the next time we see something, we already have something that we can, we have an option or a possibility that is no longer a possibility. Say, okay, we know it's not that. Now, could it still be something else that's maybe not an incident? Yes, but you've remediated one step. You've made yourself, in that sense, one step more secure.
And for me, they have tested their stuff. They've tested their incident response plan, their policies and procedures, engaged with the company. They did everything right. That is the best case scenario. You do your incident response as you were trained to do it, as your policy states you're going to do it, and the end result was it was a false positive. That is wonderful. I can go to any board out there, any leadership team out there, and defend that up and down. Yes, we had this indicator of compromise. We had this incident. We have this metric. We have this log, whatever. This is what we did. This is what we initiated immediately. This was the timing on it. This is how we moved forward. This is who we got involved. This is who we communicated with. We followed our policies. We followed our procedures. We did everything right. We found out it was a false positive. Great. That is wonderful. That's exactly what you want to happen. If I ever hear that they're going to get in trouble for doing incident response on a false positive, I'm going to be right there in their corner going to leadership saying, no. This is the best case scenario. You did everything right. Yes, it turned out to be not a problem, but we didn't know that. You have to go through the process to determine that. But guess what you get to do now? You get to not have to do breach notifications. You get to not have to notify the SEC or the FT. You don't have to do any of that because it was a false positive.
And furthermore, you've essentially tested your processes in a no-cost situation. It costs. Obviously, you are paying the company that's doing the IR. It's taking your time. It's taking your people. But it's no cost in the sense of you can now look at your process and say either it worked well, it's exactly what we need. We can now be confident in the case of a breach, we're good. Or you say, all right, well, we now can evaluate this and say, man, we need to tweak this. We wish we'd done this better. Again, which better equips you in the case of a real incident or a real breach to be better prepared. So did it cost? Yes. Did it cost what it could have to not know?
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh, you just saved yourself a lot.
But so I do lots of different kinds of tabletops, and I have one type of tabletop. It's called a live scenario, which I go in, I work with leadership, and I go in and I actually take something down. I'll unplug it, remove it, whatever, and then leadership and me sit and wait and watch what happens. This is a live scenario tabletop. Now, this is for very mature companies who have really good incident response procedures and whatever. But it's extremely helpful because the leadership can say, okay, Jonathan, what is the scenario going to be? I was like, I am going to take down your network. How are you going to do that? Well, I'm going to go slightly pull a network cable off your core router, and then they've got to troubleshoot it. Okay. And then we'll document everything that they do, and I'll show them, what's happening. The employees don't know what's happening. So you're going through this process. This is again, this is that next level of response for incident response in terms of tabletop. It's not real because you can always thunk, there you go, you're back up and running. That sort of scenario that you just talked about where it was a false positive, that's even better than a live scenario because you now have the emotional response from everybody you have to deal with. And I will tell you, dealing with incident response, there is a huge piece of dealing with that emotional response, of dealing with the leadership, dealing with the employees, dealing with the customer, there's that huge amount of emotional reaction you have to deal with during the incident response. So when you have a false positive like that, that's a better sort of tabletop than even my live scenarios, which is a really good one for certain kinds of organizations at a certain maturity level because they don't know it's a tabletop.
Right.
All they know is they have to go through the processes. They have to go through their training. They have to go through their procedures. They have to go through the plan. They should be doing it step by step by step. And that's what's going to turn into a good experience on the other side.
But my guess is that My guess is I guess I don't have a guess. What are people's response to that live tabletop from the employees when they find out that it was a tabletop? Like how do employees react?
So several different ways. One of them, they get mad. It's obvious. They get mad because you made them do a lot of work. If they were successful though, they love it.
Mm-hmm.
They figured it out. They did it right. And that's what you want. Again, this is for a mature organization. This is not, some random organization that's never done tabletops. I would never recommend doing a live scenario. And there's a lot of prep work. There's a lot of pieces that I do to get the organization ready to do a live scenario tabletop like this. And it can be really complicated. Large organizations, you got to make sure life safety systems and all these different things. But you have those two pieces where they get upset that it was a test. No one likes tests. But then you get that satisfaction of being successful at the test. The difference is they don't know it's happening until the end. So you get to see a real live response from that individual. And in most cases, I will tell them, I'll tell the leadership, this is what they should be doing to troubleshoot this. I'll plan all that out. They may not. And that's fine. If they have a different way to troubleshoot it, that's perfectly, but I'll guide them through the process. It's like, they're doing right. I mean, they're getting to that direction. But sometimes they just go way off. I had this one situation where we did the live scenario and they started troubleshooting a system that was way far away. I mean, it wasn't, it was next door, next in the rack, but they were troubleshooting something completely wrong. And here's a secret, guys, and gals, and whoever's watching. When you're in the middle of a situation in an incident response, you will absolutely get those blinders on. Mm-hmm. You will go whoosh, and it's like, nope, it has to be this. It has to be this. It's got to be. I have seen it many, many, many times. The incident commander position is so important because they have to be a step away from that. And they have to be able to take the engineer and go, stop. What about this other thing? Mm-hmm. And you have to redirect them sometimes. And that is why that incident command position is so important. Because once somebody gets stuck on something, that they will fight, they will do, it is insanity, the truest form of insanity. They keep doing, I saw somebody throw the same command at a computer probably 100 times. It's like it's giving you the same thing. Well, this has got to be the it. It's like, no, it's not. I had a good friend of mine during an incident, and I'm sure this is going to get cut out of this because we're going way over time. But he's a really good engineer. He did a great job. We were having this reoccurring problem. He came to me and he was, Jonathan, his boss was gone. And I worked somewhere else, or I was a different department. And he comes to me, he goes, Jonathan, I don't know what's wrong. I've done everything we possibly could. It's like, okay, well, let's go down and troubleshoot it. And we drop on the board and we do all this other stuff. And I'm a big dry erase person. I like having the dry erase board and draw stuff. I still have pictures of the drawings that we used to do. And I have a very specific way I draw out my diagrams, my troubleshooting diagrams. And I started asking questions because I didn't know. I mean, I didn't know what all they had done or whatever. I didn't really care what they had done because it wasn't successful. So I started asking questions, and literally the picture came together, and it's like right here. Mm-hmm. I don't know what's right there, but this piece and this piece and this piece and this piece and this piece, right there is the problem. What is right there? He goes, well, it's such and such. Like, okay, what is it? And he was telling me, it's like, what's changed? We finally figured out it was right there. They had never thought of that before. But until you actually draw it out,
you can't tell.
You couldn't see that there's a problem right here. You know, the flow is not happening. And we did that. We fixed it. We got everything back and burned. Now, it was a long night, by the way. I think we worked 36, 40 hours straight through trying to get this working again. But we got it. He had troubleshot for months trying to figure it out. He just had blinders on. It wasn't they had blinders of he was focused on one thing. He wasn't seeing the whole picture. And that's incredibly important. You have to get people to see that whole picture, and you have to test them. And that's why that live scenario is so useful is I need to see how the team is going to respond. And once we know that, then we know what we need to do. Do we need more training? Do we need more skill sets? Do we need more tools? Whatever. If you don't do that during an incident response, they are not going to be successful. Had this situation, it was probably 6 months ago, 8 months ago, whatever it was. I walked in. It was incident response. I walked in, and one of the people made a comment that he was going to kill himself. Okay, well, we need to deal with this right now.
Yeah.
You know, I don't care about the network being down. I care about, we have someone that might commit harm. So I pulled the manager aside. I was like, we have to do something about that. He goes, well, he's just being dramatic. I was like, I don't care if he's being dramatic.
Yeah, you can't say that.
We need to fix that. If we need to take stress off of him, we need to get more people. We need to do whatever we got to do. Because ultimately, human life is more important than the network or the systems or the servers or whatever. And they had just gotten desensitized to it. And I wasn't. I was like, whoa, wait a minute. Stop. Hold on. What's going on? Let's find out. And you have to know that. You have to know how people are going to respond to that. That's why the live scenario is so useful. I don't want to say that it's cruel, because it's not. It's a test. But you have to know how people are going to respond under stress. And that's one of those things that you need to determine. If someone is going to be like that, it's like, okay, well, they're not going to be an incident response anymore. Let's get somebody else in. You know, let's put the right people in place.
You know, thinking about marketing, it occurs to me that there's two things that I wonder if companies do, and I think they should. And one is, you know, in that case where there's a live scenario, or even just there's a tabletop, right? So something that doesn't have immediate impact. Is that then communicated to employees that, hey, as a company, we've, you know, in that case, everybody would have, in one sense, experienced it. Hey, this is what happened. This is what we did. Yeah. Or in the case of a tabletop, you know, we've conducted this, and then communicated the results. We found that we were successful.
Yeah.
You know, we had this network outage. That was actually a live exercise. This is what our staff did. This is what happened. We're confident that this, you know, that our systems work, or alternatively, we're making adjustments to build trust within. But then it also occurred to me, thinking about how companies, when they get breached, you know, you hear about the business impact, you hear about what they're doing remediation. You never hear about their team. So you never hear anything about, you know, this is what our team did. That, you know, our team worked for 2 weeks solid. They did X, Y, Z. They put this effort in, you know. So there's also this sort of invisibility to the security side. And this is if, you know, there was a breach, you know, bad stuff happened.
Yep.
You don't know what essentially the good guys were doing.
Yeah.
So I can imagine what that would feel like is, man, all this synergy in. We did all this to bring the network back up. We implemented all these new controls.
Yeah.
And not only does no one know, we still bear what feels like responsibility if we weren't, because no one knows.
Yeah. So I talked about those emails that I would send out to campus. Every time I sent something out, I would put on the bottom of it, because people, it was a small community. I mean, we had 1,500 employees, about 6,000 students or thereabouts. And people knew each other. I mean, there was people that I've worked with for 20 years there. I would send something out and people would come back and say, hey, Jonathan, thank you so much. Tell everybody that we're thinking about them, on the IT side. Because I was the front end. I was the one communicating it. And I always would. And I always say, thank you for all the kind words. What amazed me was when I said that in my email to the campus, I would get a huge influx of emails like, hey guys, we really appreciate you doing this on a Friday night at 10 o'clock. I hope you guys get some sleep. We would have departments who would send us cookies. They would send us coffee. People will appreciate the communication. People do appreciate what you do. But sometimes they don't have an avenue to let you know that appreciation, or they don't know what you're doing. And I think that's what you're getting to is, let's tell them what we did. We're working on this. We're improving on this. We're getting better. First, thank you for appreciating it. And we're trying to do good to make your life easier. It makes such a huge difference. It truly does. I had such support from the campus that I was previously at that I could call up just about anybody on campus. It's like, hey, I need you to do this. They would do it. But on the flip side, here's something that I always did. Every single time we would get like a spam attack of some kind, everybody would start forwarding me the emails. Hey, is this spam? Is this a malicious attack? Is this? Is this it? I might get hundreds. I might get 1,000 emails where they would just continuously forward to me. No matter how long it took me, I would always respond to every one of those emails and say, thank you. Mm-hmm. Thank you for sending this. We did figure it out. Even if I sent something out to campus saying, hey, yep, we figured this out. Here's what it was. If they emailed me directly, I replied to them and said, thank you, because I wanted them to trust me. I wanted them to know that I was appreciative of them responding to you, telling me, letting me know, even if it was a false positive, even if it was, we knew about it, I still responded to them.
Well, I can imagine on their side, that also helped assure them that doing the right thing was noticed, as opposed to, I forwarded the spam message, I never got anything back.
Yes.
Maybe next time I won't forward it, because I don't know if they're reading.
Yeah, they don't care about me. Yeah. We had a spam email, spam at whatever. And I did the same thing there every single time. Now, that was a lot of work. I mean, it wasn't a lot hard. It was reply, thanks so much for doing this. But it was so important to me that they knew that I appreciated what they did, that I would, till 1 a.m, I'd be sending those emails. And I'd get responses back. It's like, Jonathan, what are you still doing up? You worked for, 4 days straight. But it built that community. It built that appreciation all around the board.
It occurs to me, that I would guess, who knows, that in, a hacker organization, there's probably that praise going on, man. Like you got into the system. As opposed to, or, I don't know, maybe even you didn't get in, but man, that was a lot of good attacks, right? There would be that positive reinforcement. Whereas I wonder if for IT and IT security, if there's that same reinforcement of good. And so it would be quite natural to me if we're in that position to say, I'm doing a lot of work.
Yep.
It's not getting noticed. Yep. I'm not being appreciated.
Yeah.
I have a really great skill set. I can go over here.
Yeah.
I can use my skill set. I can be appreciated, and I can make money.
Yeah.
That's really hard to resist.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And it's on the darknet. You're probably not going to pay taxes on that.
Right.
I'm not saying to do that, by the way. But you're absolutely right. And what I tell people is, if you are having the conversations that you are having after an incident, that's really painful. Have those conversations after a tabletop or a pen test. Those are much easier to have. Had somebody reach out to me the other day, and he was asking about some terminology. What terminology do you use? Or do you say compromise or vulnerable or whatever? And And we were talking about that back and forth. Again, words matter, and how you use those words really matter. But it's really important to use the words at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
I would much rather want to talk to someone about a vulnerability or a compromise, talk about a vulnerability after it was found during a pen test, not after an attacker found it and compromised everybody. Because if I do it after a pen test, I want to talk to them and say, okay, this is how we need to fix this before we get compromised. So do it then, not, oh, well, this is what the vulnerability was, and this is how it got compromised, and but we're ransomware, we're dead in the water, we have no backups.
Right.
That conversation is really hard to have. Do it beforehand. Do it with a pen test. Do it with a tabletop. Do it with just your metrics. Look at your stuff. Do it with your patch management. Fix those problems before you have a problem. Have those conversations before you have a problem. That's just good marketing as a whole. As a leader in security, that's how I'm going to present it.
It occurs to me, and I don't know if companies do this, but I wonder if it would be helpful for companies to actually have some sort of write-up description of their security and processes, actually put that on their website. Will anybody ever read it? Maybe not. But what it could do is, in the case of breach, suspected breach, whatever, you could include that in the email and say, hey, here's a link to our processes and procedures, which we followed, which we've tested, right? Yeah. So you could also communicate, we do quarterly pen tests, we have yearly tabletops. So if you're thinking about marketing, one, I have to admit, if I went to a website and I saw that, I would go read it, but that's because I'm in the industry.
Oh, yeah, sure. I would too.
But the sort of confidence that could build, even if somebody didn't read it, just seeing it would plant the seed.
Yeah.
This company is not only prepared, they're communicating their preparedness.
Yeah.
Which then means in the case something happens, I can go back and say, well, wait, I heard about this. Oh man, that's good marketing. This is what they've done. This is the proactive. And then what you could add is to that same tab, the reactive. This is our preparation. Hey, now that it's happened, here's a description of what we did.
Here's the problem with that. And this is a very old way of thinking about it. Because I had this fight with somebody once. And it was actually over a job description. I was writing a job description. This is before I became CISO. I was writing a job description for a security position. And the CTO came to me and goes, we're not going to use that. It's like, well, why not? And she goes, well, you put all the things that we're doing in that job description. I was like, that's what we need. But you're just telling the attackers how to attack us. All right, I get that. But how are you going to find the person that has the skill sets that you need them to have and the experience with the tools if you don't tell them this is what you need to have? Well, we're just not going to put that out there. So that is a very specific mindset that people still have of they don't want to tell anyone what they're doing because they don't want the attackers to know what you're doing. Here's what I say to that. The attackers already know what you're doing. They're already successful. They're getting into these networks. My advice is do better. Don't have vulnerabilities. Do your patch management. Don't have admin rights. Do these things. Do all the things that the attackers are going to find and exploit and take advantage of and take down your system. But you could use that as marketing and say, hey, yes, we do practice incident response. We do tabletops. We do your yearly pen test. So here's the interesting thing. We always talk about this. You don't want to be that house on the street that's enticing. Or you don't want to be the slowest runner if you're running from a bear. So if an organization is doing good things and they do put it out there, the attackers might go, I don't want to mess with them. I want to go to somewhere else that's not doing those things. There's a trade-off there. I mean, it is a balance. I mean, you have to be careful what you say, but then again, putting stuff out there may be helpful. I understand when people, they don't want to say what they're doing because they're not doing good things. Well, my philosophy is do good things. Right. If you're doing bad things, well, yeah, you don't want to put that out there. Don't do bad things. I will get it all the time. In fact, we had this incident where I asked, we get on a phone call, the kickoff call, as a response, and we started asking a whole bunch of questions. I asked the questions, and it finally got to the point of, okay, we had this account get compromised. So I was like, all right, well, towards the end thing, I was like, what privileges did this account have? And the guy hung his head. Domain admin. What? Okay. Next time you need to lead off with that. Because if an attacker has domain admin on a Windows network, that's pretty bad. We don't have to do all those troubleshooting pieces that we were about to do because they got domain admin. So you need to lead off with it. Well, he was embarrassed. And rightfully so. I understood. I mean, at least I understood why he was embarrassed. But during the incident is not the time to get embarrassed. You have to tell us the truth. The time to be embarrassed is before you get attacked. You're so embarrassed you go fix the problem. So that's self-analysis there. If you were embarrassed because of an IT problem that you have not fixed yet, fix it. Figure out how to market it to your leadership, how to market it to your team to fix the problem. If you don't know it's a problem, that's different. That's where a pen test comes in, a risk assessment, or whatever. But once you know, you have an obligation to fix it. If you are sitting there, if you're listening to this podcast right now and you're checking off the things in your head that you know you're doing wrong or your organization is doing wrong, that's going to get them in trouble, that's a problem. You need to fix it. You need to figure out how to fix that problem. And honestly, you can just go to your leadership and say, you guys are all stupid. You're doing this wrong. Push it out of the way and do it yourself. That's not going to go very well. That's bad marketing. If you go to them and say, hey, we have this problem. This is how I found it. Here are some solutions on how to fix it. This is what it's going to cost. I need help with this. What do you need from me to be able to make the decision to improve this? That's good marketing. That is how you talk to your organization. That's how you talk to your leadership. And I think that pays dividends in terms of being successful.
Well, it occurs to me, if you have that sort of culture, that might make it easier to have someone say, yeah, we can put out on the website what we do.
Sure.
Because to what you said, that doesn't just say something about you. That says something about your competition. So if I see that on your website and I go to a competitor, I'm like, hey, they actually tell me what they do. What do you do?
Yeah.
Now, one, it's not public. And two, you might have to, oh crap, we don't have that written up anywhere. All right, well, I don't trust you as much because they're being very transparent with what they're doing. And I want to trust them with my information.
Yes.
Because I believe that they're prepared. And I believe that if something happens, because they're prepared, I can trust the response.
Yes.
And so I think that just the transparency of, and I can imagine them feel very affirming to the IT and ICT security folks that we trust you so much.
Yeah.
That we're willing to make what you do public.
Yeah.
Because we trust you that much. Yep. And that is a way for us to communicate value to you. It's also a way for us to communicate your value to everyone else out there.
Yeah.
So I wonder if that would be a way to deal with both the marketing problems, internal and external, would be to just provide that.
I think it's a change. It's a culture change. But I think that if we don't do things like that in the future, we're going to continue to lose.
Yeah. Well, this has been a fantastic conversation. Do you have any last thoughts or last words of wisdom of how we might market better?
Let's look at what the attackers are doing and how they're being successful. And that will show us how we are not being successful. If we don't do that, we are going to continue to fail at this. We're losing. Look at how many breaches that we've had just in the last 2 weeks in terms of what has been released. We had Neiman Marcus, 70 million records with the last 4 of their social. I'm not even sure why they had it, but they did. We had the AT&T that just got released. We are, and what I don't want is people to get desensitized to that. Yeah. This is a problem that we're having these breaches. Let's fix it. I think the problems that we're having is, getting people, getting communication, telling people what to do, but we're not doing that well. We're still losing this cyber war. And the hackers are also having to do this stuff. They advertise, they market, they do whatever, and they're being successful. So I think that we have to change what we're doing.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Security AF podcast, and tune in to find out what we're going to talk about next time. Thank you, and have a good day.
Thanks, everybody.